Good evening, everyone. We have come to the last and the finale session of Bloom, or the Bangalore Loom Fest that we had been holding since yesterday. I request the participants, other than the panelists, to kindly mute their microphone. Other than the panelists, Gaurang ji and Mrs. Chhabra are already with us. We are waiting for Rita ji to join us. Meanwhile, just to give a roundup of what's been happening on Bloom. Bloom was envisaged by NIFT Bengaluru to bring the best of our craft minds together, and that means not only the weavers, the artisans, the designers who are working in clusters, the aficionados, the amateur art lovers, the historians, the authors, and most importantly, also the people who work in the policy sphere. So we had in the morning Shri Shantmanu IAS, who is the Director General of NIFT, talking about his experiences of craft clusters and looms, and how the entire effort of the government is to not only aid them, but also make the weavers independent and to be able to give them a sustainable model of living. I'm so glad that we could get the panel that we have today evening, because I cannot think about a more esoteric and time, capturing the essence and the pulse of sari wearing and sari weaving at this point of time in India today. Mrs. Vijayalakshmi Chhabra, she needs no introduction to people who follow her on social media. She retired as the Director General of Doordarshan a couple of years back, and she has been one of the most avid the social media space on sari wearing. In her bio, you would see that she's a broadcaster by profession, but a raconteur by choice. Not a better description than that, because the stories that she weaves on clusters in Odisha, her home state, on Kosa in Chhattisgarh, the state that she grew up in, and on Chanderi, guides on the motives, the regional specifications, what has become extinct and what has been revived. And it is not at all an exaggeration if I say that a couple of old designs, or more than a couple of old designs, that she has taken out from her wardrobe has led to the reinvention of many designs that she has painstakingly matched with P.C. Mohanty's text on the same issue. Such a pleasure to have you with us, Ms. Chhabra. I know that she has suffered a personal loss, and I can't thank you enough for taking time out for joining us. Joining us today. She has joined us today. Rita ji again, is a sari historian, is an avid writer, is a researcher, and her book on saris, which is on traditions and beyond. All of us own one copy, or more than one copy, and we keep the well-thumbed book that she has written, and she's also the brain behind Tanban, the Sari School. She's been a TEDx speaker, and so thrilled to have you, Rita ji, on this panel. And as I talk, I can see the charkha behind her along with the books. Ma'am. Gaurang ji, this is my second conversation with you on Handloom Day special. Last August 7th in 2020, also NIFT Bangalore celebrated National Handloom Day with Gaurang ji. And that time we went on Insta Live, and we had a riveting conversation for more than an hour, where he showed his work that he has been doing, the Raja Ravi Verma painting inspired saris that he had been doing. And today, coming from four different spectrums, if I keep myself apart, both from the standpoint of government as a policy executioner or a maker on one side, and an avid sari buff myself, there is Mrs. Chhabra, there is who has considerable years and years of working on clusters, along with Vishwakarma exhibitions as well. So I opened this session with a question on with a question to Rita ji, because she has come out with a book on saris, which was unprecedented, and which was probably the crying need of the hour. So, Ritaji, what was the inspiration to, to actually get down to, after all these years of sari wearing, sari weaving and all that stuff, finally in the 2000s, I mean, in the millennial generation that we are in, we finally have a well-documented book on saris. What was the inspiration for you to pen this down with painstaking research? Mute, Ritaji. Ritaji, you're on mute, please. Can you just... Yeah, thank you.
Is that okay?
Yes, yes, Ritaji, we can hear you.
Basically, this was a research done between 1984 to 1994 at one stretch, and then again from 1998 to 2002 at another stretch. The inspiration was the Vishwakarma series of exhibitions, which I worked on with Marthan Singh, as who was a curator of exhibitions. And the first one was done in 1982 for the festival, first festival window. And he thought there were many saris in that as well. And he thought that we should dig further into the sari because it was one item out of the range of handloom made a contemporary garment and contemporize it in terms of design and in terms of techniques as well. But we didn't foresee in the early 1990s the opening up of the markets that opened to westernization, shall I say, and Western dress and Western forms of dress, other than the salwar kameez, which has already infiltrated right up to Kerala. Which from Kashmir to Kerala, it was all over the place. Yes. So people found it more ready-to-wear garment, get onto buses and get off. But at the same time, there were saris being made in prints by the big mills, whether it was, and there were a range of printed saris, wash and wear, basically with man-made yarn. They were, I would not say much cheaper, because in the 80s we had the Janta cloth scheme and we had the cheap sari come in as well. But the inspiration was the Vishwakarma saris, and we spent that 14 or 15 years in the research, traveling village by village, district to district. We mapped them on the basis of the Gazette. And we had to make changes where we heard of other weavers in other villages when we were on the travel, travels. So we had to take detours, as it were. Every night was a different night halt. So it was quite a trudge. Somebody in their 20s and 30s can certainly do it, but it's not possible to do it later. So we did it at that time, the first two states with Amba Sanyal and myself, and thereafter we took two people from each state to do the travels with us, and we traveled about 10 with them. And thereafter, thereafter we set them on the path, and the training program was such that there was no real training. We kept the diaries of all that we encountered through the day and exchanged the diaries at night. And that was about 10 o'clock the night halt. And we knew who had heard what or who had not heard what. So that was a kind of training on the ground. And on the basis of these diaries, we did more detailed books on the first three states, which was Madhya Pradesh, Bihar, and West Bengal. But then the publishers themselves started backing out. The person who had published those books from a publishing house called Wiley Easton passed away, and everybody wanted a compendium volume, but they didn't want a detailed volume. And I tried very much for it, couldn't succeed, therefore decided to do a compendium volume rather than keep it longer. The stint that came from 1998 to 2003 or so was actually to update the information as well as complete any of the gaps in the information in states that I found was missing. So I did that as a second round for myself in up to 2003, 2004. Yeah.
So thank you, Rita ji. That brings me to Vijayalakshmi ma'am, because from the very few Instagrammers and people on social media space, you are one person again who refers to books, who refers to oral traditions, and who refers to your memories, what you have seen growing up with designs and things like that. And we talked about this before as well. I mean, we have Mondiji's book, which is released somewhere in 70s, and then there is Ritaji's book, which has come sometime in the 2000s. How important is it for us as a country and as a community to document? Ma'am, you're on mute, ma'am.
Yeah, I think it's very important to document.
Yes.
And lot has been documented. I have visited some of the weavers centers on my own, though I am not an handloom expert or I have not studied textile or design. It's just been my hobby. So I found that lot during the Vishwakarma, the Bhubaneswar Weavers Service Center, all the entire Odisha weave is so well documented. And Rita ji is with us. She has documented very well. Martin Singh has documented. Lot has been already documented. B.C. Mahanti's book on Odisha weaves, and I'm sure similarly there are many other books probably may not be aware, but there are these documents available. But yes, in today's context, more work needs to be done, definitely, because people need to be made aware of the GI tag weaves so that clusters are protected, more work is done. Documentation is very important. And the Gen Z is interested in learning about handloom.
Right.
So they must get something. See, we wore sari every day. People of my generation, I draped a sari every day. So while we were buying, we were probably talking to weavers, probably talking to experts, probably our parents. So we learned it I have been wearing for 50 years. So I think I learned it from it's like on the job kind of thing.
Right.
But today it's not possible. People are in a hurry to learn and then buy. For them, it is important that we have documented record of the weaves so that they can quickly learn it.
Yeah. Gaurangji, I recall from last year that you were also somebody like Vijaya ma'am just said. She grew up wearing and learning about saris, and you grew up again in the midst of saris, thanks to your father's shop. So from that time, where you have seen from the other side of the table again. I mean, as a child, the consumer, the consumers who would come to you, did they ever used to come to you for specific designs, come to your shop, or do you see that shift in the consumer demand now, demanding a certain design that they have seen in a book or on a celebrity or on social media?
So I get customers who have seen wearing our saris and they want exactly the same thing. Other than that, if someone gets it from the book, I take a lot of time to recreate it, because from the books, what has been shown in the books till now, it is very difficult right now to recreate, because some of the designs are so intricate that the weavers don't want to do it. But we try to get it done. But at the most, nowadays, I don't see anyone coming and saying कि हमको आप वो जमाने का वो साड़ी हमको बना के दीजिए. No, I don't see that coming. I see that people want to buy ready stuff, what is readily available, because number one, they don't have that imagination कि ये जब बन के आएगी, how I will look into it. See, before I have seen this sari buying since a lot of considerable time. People, yes, in those times, they in the 70s, 80s, 90s, na, when you open the sari, immediately they used to say, "Chalo, ye mujhe acha lag raha hai, mujhe acha lagega mere upar, I will buy this." But lately, nowadays, what I see is people open out at least hundreds of saris, drape them, then come back and buy. So people don't have that imagination ki just looking at the sari ki humko ye barabar acha lagega ya nahi lagega. They want to think, they want to drape at least 3 to 4 times, and then they want to come and buy. So I don't see people coming and giving orders of recreating old designs.
most maverick demand that has ever come from a consumer to you to recreate what sort of a design, or what's really sort of stirred your imagination for this?
Yeah, but I haven't taken order. People have said ki hamara, not recreating a design, but some very odd designs people have given. Like a year or so back, I had got a bride and groom, and they wanted their created on the sari pallu, which I don't like doing it. So
okay, so that brings me to a rather interesting question. So how far do we go, Rita ji, and this comes to you as somebody who has seen and somebody who has literally sort of grown up with Vishwakarma exhibition, Rita ji, Vishwakarma exhibition, especially the second. Please correct me if I'm wrong. If that was really the contemporization. It had the mandate of contemporizing sari design, and we have the proverbial work which happened in Ikat and Kanchipuram clusters in Odisha and Tamil Nadu respectively. So how far do we go as far as Gaurang just said that he does not want to do certain things when it comes to weaving saris. What according to you would be, for young designers, what should they keep in mind? What can they tinker with? What can they bring in, and what can they not, according to you?
But basically, I think the technique controls a lot and determines quite a lot. Of what can be done. And Vishwakarma is the best that could be done at that time, because after a long period, nobody had attempted what is the best that we can do in whatever it is, whether it is Banaras, whether it is Kanchipuram, whether it is the smaller centers, whether it is Odisha, whether it is anywhere, Bengal, and so on and so forth. So I think the first one was definitely based on what was the best that we can do at that point. And we were, there were at least 3 times the number of pieces that were exhibited. We exhibited only about 200 or 190 or 86. And I think the number of pieces that came into Ahmedabad, because Martin Singh was still director of the Palace Museum, and on the floor were laid out. Maybe at the end of the whole process, I stayed 3 months there after having visited the various people who were in their own field, the finest that we thought at that time. So apart from Banaras, there was Ikats. I went to Odisha for that, as well as took the part in Salvi family member there, and so forth. So I took the finest of them and had visited all of them, Haji Munna, Haji Noor in Banaras, and so forth. So they that attempt was what is the finest we can do today. And we were happily surprised that about 600 and odd pieces were produced, as far as I remember, and exhibited were less than 200. So even out of that, we have Martin Singh actually throwing out saying, this is not good enough for a national level exhibition. Because remember, it was going to be shown in India at various places after it came back. The festivals were an excuse, though they were an act of diplomacy. It was also an excuse to give it a push to handlooms. And in fact, we had various arguments. Why can't we do this when there's no festival in India? Because the payments involved, not that they were very large at that time, were, and on a national level, just the travel to each place by each person involved was required a vast team, which wasn't very vast, about 10 people in all at that time, and putting together of what could be done at best. So from that took over to the second one. Pudu Pavu had a little bit stepping out of that, and thereafter up to 1992-94, we had 7 exhibitions of Vishwakarma, and there was Dhari, there was an exhibition between that. So it was a series of exhibitions. Every 3 or 4 years, we were doing an exhibition. How far we could go. Birds and animals was actually to test how many birds and animals were there in the tradition and how many more could be incorporated. So a lot of the artists who were in the weaver service centers came out with designs, whether they were woven designs, print designs, or painted designs. Whereas the first really outstepped it, because say Kalamkari, it was the first time that other than exploring the backdrops of the Tirupati temple, where the hangings were used for the Vishnu images. So Surya Navagraha was but we had all the religions explored. We had the Christ story explored. We had the Buddha story explored. We had even an Islamic, not an image, but the calligraphy of the Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim explored in the calligraphy of the hanging, which was used for Islam, and it was going to be offered at Mecca. Actually, finally, whether it was or whether I can't confirm. But so these were the outsteps in the first one. There were really experiments to see whether we could outstep the original story, but we didn't go further beyond that. And it was only the subsequent Vishwakarmas that the experimentation really started. So in Dhari, for instance, there was exploration of how much geometrical designs. Right. How many geometrical designs could use the dhari in its stripes and its checks, and how many could be configured? Right. Vishwakarma Kshetra was the directories of each area, because the identities were getting lost. Kalamkari was doing the trees of life that were originally done in North India, in Farrukhabad, etc. So the trees of life were explored in natural dye, etc., on a scale. And luckily, we have artists like Kailasham in that area who are doing trees of life as hangings, as curtains, so for various reasons of home range, of the home product range. So that was also an experiment. For instance, the first spreads that were made were really 90-inch, that were never done in Potapaka in Andhra before, and they were then became common to do 90, 108, 180 inch width looms. The loom was set up for that width, so they became huge bedspreads and any cut thereafter. So that was the way the experimentation went.
Vijay ma'am, I want to come to you on this. As a consumer of a sari, you've been wearing saris for so long, and you've been buying from across platforms. What started probably as government emporiums which sold handlooms, to now online shopping and things like that. As a consumer, how much do you welcome contemporization of traditional design?
I'm so glad, Rita ji, Vishwakarma exhibition was done. People of my generation, many of us, I was of course then working in ICCR. So ICCR used to look after teams going for Festival of India. So I was pretty closely. You hear my seniors talk about it. We would go and visit these exhibitions, and we learned about different weaves, and we actually learned to appreciate handloom. And we used to, those days, as Susan said, I used to buy from Baba Khadak Singh Mark. Most of my sarees I bought from Baba Khadak Singh Mark from different state emporium. I'm quite a purist in the sense that I would like weaves to be preserved, because there are GI tags given to different state weaves. The GI tag is given to protect the cluster, to protect the livelihood of cluster of that weavers of that cluster. What I have noticed these days, in the name of contemporarizing the weaves are mixed up. You see a Pochampalli weaver copying a sari or design from Gujarat. You see that people are, the sellers are going to Orissa weaver and asking them to make more geometrical patterns in Orissa saris. So my fear is, if this thing keeps happening, we won't be able to recognize which weave is from which state. I just want to give one example of innovation. See, everyone knows that years back, Barampuri weavers were taken to Sonpur by the Raja of Sonpur. They carried with them the as Rita ji said, the most important thing is technique. They carried the technique, the extra web technique with them, but they did not carry the birds and the the Karela motif with them. They were young weavers, they were influenced by Baluchari, but again, they did not copy the Baluchari motifs. What they did, use the technique of extra web that they had learned in Ganjam, and they incorporated the local flowers, the local flora and fauna, the chitta motifs, the Alpana-like motifs of Odisha, which you see around, in every household. You see it on the walls and on the ground. So they incorporated those design, though the Bomkai Pallas, the earlier days Bomkai Pallas, you can make out, if you love Baluchari, you can make out that they were inspired, but they did not copy Baluchari. So I think innovations need to be done in such a way that people need to encourage the designer to explore the local motifs or local ideas, local traditions, local festivals. For example, in Gopalpur, I really loved a sari called Ghoda Navami, because there is a festival that happens, called Ghoda Navami. So the weaver has used those motifs there. Then the Gopalpur weavers were great at extra web, and when the introduced to them during Vishwakarma after the super cyclone, they have woven Sun Temple Konark, they have woven wheels of Konark, and the fish, not only fish. What I discovered, there were fish bones, which an Odia can only, sort of make out, because when you walk around the ponds, you see around how beautifully they have incorporated local motifs. The day they start copying motifs from another state, I think that will be gone. So the need of the hour is to respect GI tag, and within that, encourage weavers with designs which appeal to their local sensibilities. Somebody can say, I look at this sari, I say, this is Barampuri. But if I add rows of ikat, the threads are made in Noapatna, and today's Barampuri has a double palla with ikat all over, or the motifs from Gopalpur, the turtle, the lotus, and everything is there. Turtles are very specific to Gopalpur. I saw Barampuri which looked just like Gopalpur. Only difference was it was on a thick silk. It doesn't look Barampuri to me. This is what is a simple Barampuri. This is what is Pasapali. So this is what I feel, because I have been wearing saris since I was just 16. I found it very comfortable. I not only looked after my family, worked in the kitchen, supervised my children's homework in saris, but I also managed a full-fledged career for 35 years. I wore it to hospitals when elders were sick. I did night duties in my sari in hospitals. I did my cricket meetings middle of the night with BCCI in my saris. And I found, this is what is my learning. The saris look good. If somebody can say, hey, you're wearing a sari from Rajasthan, you're wearing a sari from Odisha. But if we kill that, I see that happening a lot in today's design intervention. So I'm really not in favor of design intervention if it's a copy from another state. If it's a new thought, it's welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot, ma'am, for brilliantly encapsulating, your experience and what you've been seeing around. So, Gaurang, as somebody who has been, experimenting a lot with designs. And in fact, I always tell my students also that, probably you're the only designer who tries to stretch imagination and who tries to stretch capabilities and, come up with what the weavers can actually do. You've experimented with clusters of, weavers from Patni, ma'am was talking about Ganjam, the Jamdani technique. What has been your journey so far in experimentation part, especially with the saris? Because you have not moved into any other space but held on to saris. And this was one personal question also, because as a child, when you went into the matching center of your father business, why did you never think about a menswear or ready-made, so to speak? But why did you pick saris, and why did you stick on to saris?
Okay, the last question first. I do menswear and I do some ready-mades also, but my first love is only saris. I don't know, since a boy when I was going to the matching center 4 hours in the evening, that artist in me started growing when I saw the whole 6 yards of the 6 yards of canvas in front of me, the beautiful different weaves which used to come to the store to match the blouses, the vibrancy of the colors, the designs, the textures. Somehow that started growing in me. And one fine day, I must have just finished 10th class or something, and I found a beautiful Kathakali face, a Kathakali figure, and I told my mother I would like to paint this on the sari pallu. So she bought me a tussar fabric, and it was a deep gray in color. I drew the whole Kathakali face on the pallu, and I did the painting also of it. And that's how my whole journey of that doing drawings for saris, designs for saris started. And till today, like lots of my assistants and everyone insists, why don't I do some Western wear, Western cuts? Why don't I showcase Western cuts on the ramp also? Why don't I do Paris Fashion Week or New York Fashion Week with Western cuts with Indian weaves and textiles? I said, no. If I have to do any fashion week in the world, it has to be saris only on the ramp. And all at my shows also in India, I prefer 90% it is going to be saris on the ramp, and then 10% will be, because people have always identified me with my saris. Even if I showcase, like one of my Lakme show, I had done 50% of saris, and I had done 50% of gowns, Western cut gowns out of Khadi Jamdani. I had listened to my assistants, and they said, let's do gowns, sir. So it was about 14 saris and 14 gowns on the ramp, and you won't believe those 14 saris got sold out in 10 minutes after the show, but the gowns never got sold. So people come to me only for saris. And it's always been like day and night. It's always been thinking, what can I do more? What more designs can I do? And I totally agree with Vijayalakshmi ji is, don't copy from one state to, like, take the case of the Patola pattern designs and putting it in Pochampalli, which is happening right now. Don't do that, because then what is the identity of Pochampalli now? It's exactly the same replicas they're doing. The pattern Patola sells for 1.5 rupees, and the same design you get it in Pochampalli in double ikat for about 15-20,000 rupees. But it's nowhere near connected to the pattern Patola. The Pochampalli has lost its identity here. So what I do is I fuse different techniques together and come up with new designs. Like with me in Banaras, I have used the Banaras technique of Jamdani with the Paichni technique of Jamdani, where there is no weft. There's only warp and the weft. So the body of the sari has the Banaras technique of Jamdani, the warp, the weft, and the extra weft, and the border and the pallu will have only the warp and the extra weft. So I have used two different techniques. I have fused together new texture, but the design sensibility, the colors are basically going to be of the same, the original village where this is woven. Like I have done Kanjivarams with Kota texturing, but the designs are from the temples of Kanjipuram. I have used organza from Banaras in Kanchipuram, but again the designs are animal motifs and the walls of the temples in the same Kanjivaram. So here you should not be mixing matching the designs. You should be mixing matching and coming up with the new textures, new colors by using 2 to 3 different state techniques in the sari.
Right. You're on mute again. Rita ji, can you unmute yourself? Yeah. Rita ji, you worked with weavers in the 80s and in the 90s. And now with the work of Tanban, you are again connected with the weavers, especially in Khadi.
Can you tell her it's on the left side? It's left.
Rita ji, red color mic symbol must be there, a red color thing.
You can do it, right? You can't do it from there. You can control it.
I can only ask her to unmute, but not. I think I will go on to that khadi question to Gaurang for the time being till we are able to restore. Has khadi suddenly become again, I mean, it was envisioned by Gandhi when he envisioned khadi. Khadi was supposed to be for the masses, but unfortunately, I mean, I don't know. I mean, probably this is the business cycle of a product, so to speak, because we also need to talk about sari as an economic good, moving away from the aesthetic of it and moving away from the skill part of it as an economic good in the market. Has khadi become unaffordable for people? I mean, and also, I mean, the pure handspun yarn and then hand woven khadi fabric, has it just vanished totally,
No. That's a wrong notion. What you're saying, it is not vanished. It is very much there, and you won't believe it's being used so much now than before, and it's very, very reasonably priced. Also, you get a khadi fabric from say somewhere around 300 rupees per meter.
Right.
And khadi is such a versatile fabric, and it's so comfortable in any of the season of India, in any of the seasons. You can wear it in summer, you can wear it in winter, and it has such a beautiful fall. You can do anything with the fabric. You can dye, print, you can do paintings, you can do tie-dyes, it takes in any colors. The colors are fast. If you do it, dye it in a proper way, you can use natural dyes. You can do any kind of printing with khadi. It's such a versatile fabric, and it's available very, very easily everywhere. You have so many exhibitions going on. You have khadi bandars. You have big shops also selling khadi now. You have lots of young designers using khadi as their main base now.
Yeah, as an economic good question, then becomes a hand-spun yarn and a hand-woven khadi fabric.
It is affordable. Hand-spun and hand-woven khadi is affordable. Like that's what I said. It is available from 300 rupees per meter. So I know that every village, every center is not doing hand-spun yarn. Yes, but not hand-spun. But at least, yes, khadi is there. At least some centers, yes, they are doing hand-spun also. And it is very reasonably priced.
Then again, I mean, becomes a difficult question, right? Because the moment we insist on a hand-spun yarn khadi and hand-woven, then the price really shoots up.
Not much, not much.
For instance,
handspun yarn, like my weaver makes handspun yarn. My weaver makes it handspun yarn, and it's not much expensive. See, the labor charges in some of the villages are very less, very reasonable. So it doesn't shoot up that much.
Rita ji,
like Rita ji uses yarn only.
Yeah. In fact, Rita ji, I was asking the question that, in the 80s and in the 90s, when you have visited clusters with Mapu and worked with weavers, and now your experience with running Tanba, and again, you are in, working in clusters with the weavers. How far do you think is a sensitive? How far has that changed from the 80s to the 2020s that we are in now? Over 40 years, 4 decades of having worked with weavers, what is that big change, or the similarities that you see?
Well, basically, I think the weavers' capabilities have been enhanced, but I think the pushing of the market, the enhancement of the market has made them, like everywhere else, want to do less in less time, less effort, with more, what shall I say, for their labor. So the difficulty is what we could do in Vishwakarma, where payment wasn't a constraint. Market dictates are definitely more pronounced now. And the weaver is as much a part of the game of taking the shortcuts as the producer. And I'd like to discuss this more with Gaurang ji at any time, because I think we need somebody like him to see how something can be sustained. On a small scale, I think it's very difficult. And we need his kind of effort to see how it can be made sustainable in the long run. So I think the weaver is as much a party to this game of cutting short the time and the effort involved. Because remember that what we did in Vishwakarma cannot be done and made sustainable in a market sense. Because there are constraints of the, we use the optimum. For instance, we tried, when we use now silk in the borders, we try to get only Karnataka silkatta, which is a variety of silk, rather than Chinese silks.
Yeah.
Or zari made to order, to the thickness required, the core is of cotton, and then the silver wire, the percentage of the gold, etc., etc. So
Right.
all that determines the quality. And that I think everybody wants to cut costs. And the effort involved in weaving with either three shuttle or jamdani, they be made sustainable. There are many questions which only a market determines.
Probably, I mean, it's important to draw the distinction here that, Vishwakarma exhibition, identified and recognized the performative value of textiles in India, and that performative value of sarees as well. A certain cultural tradition and a skill tradition of India abroad and here. But, to me, what it really did was to show the weaver, and to show the consumer as well, how much the technique and imagination can be stretched to incorporate and to imbibe and to build together. So, Vijay ma'am, as someone who has, you just explained how, in your formative years, in ICCR, the exposure that you had there. And then as a sari consumer as well. The performative value, ma'am, the performative value of Indian textiles. So from where it was temple hangings, and even if you look at the handlooms of India, I mean, whether it be or the Banarsis and things like that, which were meant for special occasions, so to speak. To that, we are coming to a democratization of the handloom weaves. And as somebody who has seen that as a consumer, I mean, happening, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, is it good that it is in place now, or was there a case to make it or to keep it, closed and esoteric?
I have my views on this.
Yeah.
The first thing is, I very strongly feel that we have to encourage youngsters, let's say mid-20s to 30, 35, to get into the habit of wearing sarees and create it. Happen. It will only happen if there are sarees available which they can afford. See, Instagram sometimes spreads a very wrong kind of value. We are wearing every day. At my age, probably I can wear every day an expensive saree, though I try very hard to post very normal, regular sarees to normalize saree wearing. Those sarees are available which youngsters with their own salary can buy and wear every day. Unless they wear every day, there will not be a market demand. Because as a young girl, I took to sari, I fell in love with it. Today, I can wear the best of the saris. But if I didn't know how to wear a sari, didn't love the saris, why would I spend so much of money on buying the best quality sari? So in our time, there was a clear demarcation. When I was studying, I never wore anything other than tant because that was the only affordable sari. 18 rupees, the feriwala would sell it, and I could wear it every day. Relatively more expensive. My pocket money was barely 50 rupees when I was a hostel student. I would go to Shankar market, look for kota sarees for 30 rupees. Sanganeri prints, 30 rupees. With a printed blouse, it looked very smart. Yeah. The moment I started working, I could, by that time, Kosa had become very popular among the bureaucrats and the arty type of people whom I met in ICCR. So I saw for the first time Bag prints and all in Mrignani. For a working woman, it was easy to afford that from hardly 600 rupees at that point of time. So Kosa was a very affordable fabric at that point of time. The sarees, the printed ones, the minimalistic extra work of Chhattisgarh. So now if that kosa suddenly becomes 20,000 or let's say 15,000, I want to wear it. It was best suited for corporate, whether it's corporate world or government sector. It looks dignified, it looks beautiful. So there were sarees like these, which young people should be able to afford. Then there are weddings, there are special occasions. Of course, you have Kanjivaram. I couldn't have cupboard full of Kanjivarams then. I bought my high-end Kanjivarams only when I was about 55 and my children were to get married, and I chose Kanjivaram over Banarsi, and I bought, I splurged. But by that time, I had lived an entire life. So I used to wear what? Sarees from Army, which cost in Salem, my sister was there who would provide me some 600 rupees. So that is what I could afford to even today. The young, but we need to put the youngsters into habit of wearing sarees. If we don't do that, the expensive sarees won't sell. So my request to everyone is that please don't artificially hike the prices of sarees. Can be sold at cheaper rate. I'll give you an example. Many people unhappy with me when I write it. There is a saree called Sutaluga in Odisha, which still costs 600 rupees in Boyanika and Uttalika. Social media for 5,000 rupees. It doesn't look a sari worth 5,000 rupees. Because of Sutaluga in Odisha, the working class, the average middle class still wears handloom. It's woven in Jagatsinghpur, purely handloom, hand spun, hand woven sari, and it's beautiful. So I gift all my friends, all my social media friends, Sutaluga, which is not more than 600 to 700 rupees. Even today in Odisha, and you find Instagram sellers selling it for 5,000 rupees. So slowly the market will adapt to it. The shopkeepers in Odisha will say, if they are selling it on Instagram for this amount of money, we should not sell it. But the poor weavers of Badabag society will never get their due. Kosa still is being sold for 3,500 on Instagram by some weavers of Chhattisgarh. But the moment, they buy it and there is a middleman, there is, which, earlier weavers were suffering because of other kind of middlemen, sellers. And suddenly a 3,500 sari becomes 10,000. It goes out of reach. So I think we should try very hard to maintain different kind of saris which people can afford to wear for different occasions, and different age groups can afford to buy saris as per whatever they can afford. A rich person can buy the most expensive saris, why not? So, but there should be some sort of an effort to maintain sanity in this pricing war. Now you are on mute.
Yeah, yes, I'm muted, ma'am. Rita ji, I have a quick question for you, because you have also worked with documenting the different trades, different sari trades across the country, and the organization has benefited immensely from your guidance as well. So now we are also seeing that the movements of trying different trades, are trying different trades and styling it differently and things like that. Can you say that, with these drapes coming back, I see that as a great, great, what shall we say, great fillip that you have given by documenting it, that for the first time we are able to see somewhere because of the net and because of tribal drapes and drapes from remotest corners of Kerala to Andhra to Telangana, it's all out there. So is it important to reinvent sari wearing at different stages and with different generations? Rita ji, I want you to take this question first.
Setting up the sari school workshops was really to give back the ABCD of making your own thing out of it. My question was that the limitation of a stitch count. is once you give it the neck hole, the 2 armholes, and possibly the leg hole, it predetermines how it is to be worn. In fact, people ask me, why are you not for the stitched sari? Now the stitched sari is selling all over the place. In fact, the stitched costume, even for dancers, is now stitched, pre-stitched. Because I don't want to go through the process of draping it again and again. Whereas somebody like Shanta Rao, whom I did consult for the sculpture, she had actually documented the sculptures on the temples and could tell me how these were draped. Now that's a marvelous thing. You interpret that. So I said, why can't we just give the ABCD back and let them, the young people, mostly it was young people, students of design who came to the workshops. Now we don't have them because of the pandemic for the last 2 years, but they were often every week since 2009 or 10. And I started them just before the last volume came out. It was published in 2010 and we started in 2009. So the idea was, what you can do with an unstitched garment, you can never do with a stitched garment, because you have the predetermined place to put it on. Whereas in a draped garment, you can make what, depending on your size, depending on your girth, depending on your form and shape, depending on what age group you are, if you've got to show your body with a very little blouse, which is hardly there, you should wear a kanchuki type, which was basically a band, and drape it. So show your body, but do it in style. Show your assets, not your limitations. We're all the time showing what we, our disadvantaged parts, shall we say. So you have a young person with a huge backside, showing her huge backside, which is not conducive to. If I at 70 odd, I'm going to start wearing jeans, it's not conducive to my form. Whereas I'm going to show all my shortcomings with age. So what I'm saying is, body is one garment that allows you to show your assets and not your shortcomings. So why don't you take advantage of that? And it was strangely and surprisingly popular among the people who came to these workshops. And that is why I collaborated with the group from Bangalore that and they said, would you help? And we took a team of 2 people from here, draped their, taught their models how to do it, because we didn't want to be present in the video, because that is its subject, because everybody feels that she can do it with help, but she can't do it without help. So I didn't want that interference. She can certainly do it with help, but she can do it without help. And it takes this guy, which said, Karat Sringar Shani Bhar Lagithe. Matlab ki it takes a second to do your shringar to your advantage. So it takes just that extra minute and just putting it. So your sari takes 2 minutes. This will take you another minute to put it, drape it a different way. But to learn the basis of it, and then you can make your own thing out of it. Now they're wearing them with pants, without pants. I don't care. Frankly, but today it is an upper class asset. Remember that the sari disappeared in all its wearing styles when people started moving to towns and cities and didn't want people to recognize them as where they came from. So the Uriya sari or the wearing style from Andhra was lost when they came to the city. They didn't want to, she's come from that place. She's wearing a Maharashtrian style. They didn't want to be recognized for that. They started wearing the gold sari because it became, and Gyanoda Nandini, who introduced this style, basically because the Bengali style was worn without a blouse and petticoat. She didn't want to be stuck with a chadar over it to go to the market. So she adapted it. She lengthened it by a meter or so to throw it over her left shoulder. So that became a sort of city style. And she called her school, the sari school, which she opened in Thakurbari, as the place you came to for ladies who want to go out. And that is exactly the opposite we did with the sari school, which is for ladies who want to go out with their own style. So it's really just giving back. After the book, I thought we should have some active element of how to give back all that we've learned, which you can't do so well with just the drawings and the pictures at the end, which were taken often in very dark huts where there was no light, and I had to often use a flash, cut off the head and cut off the legs because there was no space, and I was often adjusting the camera in the darkness, so with a flash, because everybody was pounding the door to get in. And I usually did it at the end of the visit to a village where people had crowded by now, and I was going to leave, but I wanted to leave with some, track on the wearing styles. And we called one lady or second lady. In some cases, even a man who had been in the local theater, I called him in because he was much better at it than the women. So I called him in to do the draping, and he was very good at it. In fact, the women were laughing because he did it much better than them. But he dressed as a woman in the local theater, and he was very good at it. So we did it in the darkness with him. With him, I could do it in the open because everybody was joined in the laughter as a document, a departure document before we were leaving. Because otherwise, if we did it in the beginning, we'd be totally inundated with laughter, and we wouldn't be able to concentrate. And often these meetings took place in a common area, either under a tree or in a community center, or outside a temple, or wherever they were willing to sit, where caste restrictions were not there. Right. I didn't want a caste because often they objected to this. We won't sit here with the Modalyars, especially Tamil Nadu. Strange, I thought Tamil Nadu would be much more liberated, but they had many restrictions about where we would sit all together. Meaning all the communities who were weaving, which were often 5, 6, 7, and they weren't. They were disparate. Those who. So I think the wearing styles, and what is interesting about wearing styles is they didn't differ from community within the same village. So communities within the same region were often wearing the same styles. Whether they were Hindus and Muslims, I couldn't make out, except by the name. So styles seem to belong to a region rather than a community. So that was very interesting. Yeah.
Right. I would want Vijay ma'am to wrap up this question, but before that, quickly to Gaurang, as a designer and as a practitioner of sari experimentation, any particular fondness for any particular drape, or you.
So basically, women in general wear the sari in regular way. As one, how you have
the
worn.
Drape,
so it's the regular typical Bengali drape. So I don't experiment much with the drapes, but yes, I am fascinated. For some of my shows, I have tried doing it. I love the way Ritaji does it, but practically, I don't know. In the fashion weeks when I do it, then very normal draped, so that they can see it properly and then they can buy it also. But yes, for youngsters, what Ritaji does, the different kinds of drape, that becomes an inspiration, that becomes a motivation for them to buy saris, so that they can drape it in a different way and they can wear it, and that can become a fashion style statement. So I love doing those things, but for some restrictions.
So from him is there are many more people today demanding 9-yard saris than there were 5 years ago. So we do them, we have to make at least 5 or 6 saris on a single warp. So if we have a demand for, say, 2 or 3 people who get a warp of 9-yard saris made. But other than that, I often wear just a Mangalagiri cloth in half if I need a 9-yard sari and I don't have enough of them. So what I do is take one leg in a Mangalagiri drape, a fabric which is of a contrast color, and with this sari as starting with the right. So you can do many things with the sari. And I didn't invent this. Basically, I saw this one leg green and one leg red in a very poor area of Maharashtra, which was, I think, Marathwada. And I said, this is very intriguing. What has she done? How did she do this? And I got off to when a bus stopped and this lady got off. But she ran away. She thought I was after something else. So I said, let's follow the bus then. Then she went to her village and I told her exactly what I wanted. And she was then very nice. And then we went into the house to photograph what she had done. So basically, she bought only two once a year on Nag Deepavali, which is exactly after Deepavali. Now, those two saris in the 9-yard style wore out on one or the other of the backsides because she was squatting. They were the laborers working on roads, or and this tore at one side or the other side. So what she would do is take the longer end of one sari and the shorter end of the other sari, which had survived from last year, and she would buy them on your Nag Deepavali. She had to make it last. So she would take the first sari half, which was shorter, on her left leg, tuck it in the kashta in the back, and then start with the right side with her longer half of the other surviving sari. And that's how she got the one leg red and one leg green. And I don't have enough of the torn sari, so I use a Mangalagiri fabric on my left and the regular sari, which is 5.5 yards on my right.
So I had two brides coming in last 1 month who wanted to drape their saris differently. They didn't want the regular drapes.
Right.
So one wanted a 9-yard sari, and one wanted to drape it in a very typical Bengali way with the bunch of the keys and all that. So we have young girls who are experimenting now. So they are fascinated by the 6 yards of sari, and then at the same time they want to do different drapes.
Yeah. I want a quick input from Vijaya ma'am on this, because she has headed a government organization in her sari. And how do you take on to this experimentation? And in fact, I recall that in some specific post, and that's a rarity, that you do come out with a drape which is worn by your mother at home, isn't it? So that's the maximum you go with the drape on social media. So, ma'am, what is your standpoint on it? And I'll quickly want to wrap this up before I open.
I just want to tell you about my childhood memory. When we say no petticoat, no blouse, I have mother in early 60s. I must have been 3 or 4 years old, but I remember she did not wear, we had just moved to Bhilai from Odisha. She did not wear a petticoat. She did not wear a blouse. Her house help, who was from Sundargarh, she also did not wear a blouse. The difference was my mother came from a Zamindar aristocrat family. Her art pore kind of sari with entire Eastern India wears, Bengalis and Odias, with her key, chavi ka guchha thrown in. She looked like head of the family. And the other woman who we loved very much, she used to wear the Odisha tribal sari, high on her, this thing. And she would look equally beautiful. I used to be so fascinated. Then slowly things changed, as they got exposed to people living from different states, their neighbors. My mother started wearing navy drape. My mother started wearing petticoat, blouse. She started wearing chint, unmatched blouses and navy drape, but open palla. But Suhag, our house help, continued wearing her tribal drape until I remember very late she took to navy drape. And when I went to college and I started wearing, because of convenience, because of trying to look dignified and all, I took to navy drape that also pinned. Throughout the college, I draped it like this. And when I joined a government job, I had to wear it like this because I couldn't manage, carrying so many tapes, doing my editing on the editing machine in All India Radio and later in Doordarshan, looking into the camera. That was just impractical. So it was convenient. Sari was very, very convenient drape this way for me. I continued like this I even met Crown Princess of Romania. She made an exception for me as the Indian delegate because the dress code was black suit. I wrote to them that it is my national garment and I would like to wear a sari, and not black, it is for mourning. I would like to wear a red sari. I think I was wearing this sari. She made an exception, and you will be surprised, in the room full of delegates, she only spoke to me and she said, oh, you're wearing an interesting dress. So my sari draped this way always made me stand out. And but I think saris need to evolve.
Yeah.
It is so free flowing. Youngsters, my daughter and my daughter-in-law don't wear it like this, but they do wear saris because I encourage them. They wear it whichever way they feel like wearing and they look beautiful. So I'm all for young girls experimenting on social media, but if you can't walk into boardrooms in those kind of drapes. I could walk into boardrooms even with other women sitting in the suit, and men, all kinds of men's advertising industry, from film world. I chaired my meetings wearing my saris like this. It was most comfortable, hands-free, and you didn't feel you were a woman and you had to take care of your sari all the time. So this is my take, that depends where you are, what kind of afford to experiment with your drape. You must, people must love sari. My main concern is they must love sari. Sari just hugs you, it hugs you, it takes your shape, it hides all your flaws. So let the youngsters experiment with it, wear it the way they want to wear.
Yeah. So in fact, I've got a lot of questions on, DMs, in fact, saying, talking about power loom saris and screen print and things like that. And, Rita ji would remember that, for Vishwakarma, where there's a performative art, we have had for Vishwakarma exhibitions. But I'm not saying into power loom and screen prints at this point of time, because this is in commemoration of National Handloom Day, and I'll stick the focus, pin the focus on handloom itself. It's 6:18, and we would quickly take 2 or 3 questions before we wrap up. There are a lot of messages on chats which have been, chiming in, and opinions and things like that. But if there is a specific question, please do type it in with the specific name of the panelist whom you would want to take that question. There have been questions on identifying weave forms and things like that, but that's outside the purview of this discussion. There's one question which has come, which is on the pricing standardization across country. Gaurang, do you want to take this
I don't
question?
think that is possible. See, right. Each weaving sector has its own labor charges, has its own expenditures and all. So you can't have a uniform pricing for everything. It depends on the different types of weaves, the detailing that goes on, the dyes, the yarns, everything. So standardization of pricing is not possible at all. Pricing is done according to the sari woven, the design woven, the number of textures, the number of shuttles given, number of colors used. So that's not possible.
Yeah. And Rita ji, in your experience, how has social media changed the sari narrative?
I think it's made us look inwards more. This westernization flood that had happened since the 90s, to some extent because of foreign designers using Indian textiles, as well as Western wear having its limitations. I think the change of perspective. When I went to college in the 70s, if you went in wearing a sari to college, it was taken as a statement as of coming of age. When in the late 80s and 90s, if you went in a sari to college, it was taken as the Benji who had come to college. So this has to be reversed somehow, and it will be reversed. Everything in our sort of top to bottom. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen from bottom to top because people are imitative. So the imitative phase of westernizing, for instance, a pair of jeans is unsuited for this climate. I am shocked by all the young people who wear it because it's like wearing cardboard on your legs. It doesn't allow for sweat to be absorbed. Sometimes an American lady came over once a few years ago, and when she took off her pants, they could literally stand in the corner. You know, they didn't fall down because she didn't change her jeans for a couple of months, she said. So it's like that. It isn't suited for this climate. A sari much more suited, and they feel that a salwar. I don't think dress is a moral question, to tell you the truth. It is not a moral question. It is a bit like a Gandhian question. If you recall where you come from and where you're going, you will wear what you think is most appropriate. And it should be your personal judgment, I think. It should not be imposed by anyone, because then there will be a reaction against it. And I don't think that is the way to work with young people or old people or any people of any age. So, but I think the flexibility of a draped garment, I would still reiterate, and that is important for me and you do what you have to do, and then you move on and give it over to another younger generation to take further. I thought that this sari research was, in fact, a first round, and there would be other younger people in each state who would take it further for research, further for design development, for yarns that could be used, further for different drapes. So that, I think, is an open question. It should be taken further and by young people. Thank you.
Right. There is one question.
You've gone mute, Susan.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. There's one question Mr. Manish has put about developing a color scheme specific to India and whether Pantone chips can be made available to the artisans. So I'll just quickly brief on that. That NIFT is working on developing a color palette which is which has more of Indian lingo in it. But yes, the export market definitely has issues when it comes to standardization. So what we talk about Firozi and Slaty and those colors, we are trying to bring back that into the vocabulary again. But Pantone, in terms of export standardization, Manish, I think it's a very long way. I mean, I can tell you that not even fashion schools and design schools, not many of them. Because NIFT is very well stocked on that aspect, would be able to afford a I have with me Mr. Ansari. Is he on board? So hello, Harris.
Yes, ma'am.
Just to introduce, this is a student of NIFT Bangalore, and he is the Banaras cluster se hai. He is come from Banaras all the way to Bangalore to study design and fashion. Harris, कितने generation से आप लोग इस काम में हो?
मैम हमारे क्लस्टर जो मिल के काम करते हैं 300 वीवर्स.
और कितने जनरेशन से आप इस काम में हैं? I mean, आपके परदादा कितने generations back?
आइडिया नहीं है, वो काफी पुराने हैं.
Right. और हैरिस, सोशल मीडिया से कितने ऑर्डर्स आपको मिलते हैं सारीज में, इंस्टाग्राम में आप या इंक्वायरीज?
हम लोग पहले सोशल मीडिया से इतने ज्वाइन नहीं थे. एक्चुअली हम लोग निफ्ट रायबरेली से, मतलब हमारा क्लस्टर निफ्ट रायबरेली से ज्वाइन था. तो जब यहाँ से लोग वहाँ गए थे, 1 हफ्ते का होता है क्लास, तो उन लोगों ने बताया, तो फिर हम लोग 1 साल इंस्टाग्राम से ज्वाइन थे, सोशल मीडिया से. और काफी जैसे हम लोगों ने उस पर अपना पूरा एड्रेस और कांटेक्ट नंबर सब डाल दिया है, तो काफी लोग कांटेक्ट करते हैं और साड़ी जैसे भी ऑर्डर देते हैं वैसे हम लोग परचेस कर देते हैं.
आपको साड़ी वीविंग आता है हैरिस?
यस.
just wanted to put Harris onto the panel because, Harris is the youngest member, in this panel, and, he's the future ahead for cluster weaving, and he's actually a student of a fashion institute. I mean, he's a student. He's one of the most brilliant students of Bangalore campus today, and and it's also to say, I mean, see the entire the screen. There's a designer, there's a consumer, there's a government space, there is a historian and author, and there's also a student of a fashion design, campus who hails from a cluster. And I would want to end this panel on a very, very positive and optimistic note that, Saree has always been there, will be there. Lengths go up and down, the design motives change and things of that sort, but it is the quintessence of India Handloom, the brand. When Ministry of Textiles launched its India Handloom brand, Saree has always been placed at the center of it. And at the same time, I would also want to stress that, not only is Saree important, but also the coarse handloom, which extends to bed sheets and bedspreads and lungis and all those things also, which are important and which we should, actively encourage by buying and promoting it in our discussions. Thank you, panelists, Rita ji, Vijay ji, and Harris as well. Thank you so much for joining us today on this finale of Bloom. Over 7 panels on the last 2 days. We have brainstormed on various issues, and what has really come up for everybody to mull over and tease the nuances has also been that handloom narrative about saving the loom and about saving the weave and all these things have to change into modernizing the weaves in technology and innovation. And by modernization, we do not mean producing more, but also stellar work which happens in yarn and stellar work which happens in promoting the technique and documenting it for generations to come, so that there is a repository that people can look at that. And today, just the penultimate session, Prasad Vidapa was also talking about how he met a young girl who was wearing a Sanganeri printed mini skirt, and that's the beautiful part of India, that we are so adept at walking in different generations. And so handloom also, we reinvent, we reinterpret, we stand on the shoulders of giants. And so whatever Mapu did, whatever Kupul Jaikar did, Kamala Devi ji did, Rita ji has been a very important link in that. And then continuing on to aficionados and consumers like Vijay ji, who has made a very conscious collection of her sarees and helping to widen it. And then Gaurang, being the maverick designer that he is, always pushing the limits of imagination when it comes to fusing techniques. And also the last link who joined, Harris, who also gives me hope, because as a student who now receives proper design inputs and about a design education, so to speak, I'm sure that all the handloom clusters are absolutely safe in this country. So before I say my final thanks, I would just want to introduce my team behind, even the only face of the moderators sitting. Could we switch on the lights and have the team across? Yeah. So here we have Dr. Janali Pachpai, who is the campus academic coordinator, and who is coordinating this festival. And there's Prateek Ghosh, assistant professor of the campus, who moderated the panel on online marketplace yesterday. And also our technology man was Prashant Casey, who is associate professor, who has had 2 sleepless nights coordinating. And then there is Satish as well, who is our computer man, who has also done this. There is Binya in the thumbnails. I have all my faculty here. We have, and I really am emotional when I say this, that this was a dream this together. We had a lot of naysayers who said that people are done with the webinars and people are done with the Zoom. But 300 to 350 people have been with us in this journey. And I want to thank all my faculty, my team, and all the 27 odd panelists. The and Vijaya ma'am and Rita ji. Thank you so much on behalf of NIFT Bengaluru, all the audience for joining us and for keeping this discussion on handloom alive. And thank you once again. And we'll keep the discussion alive, not only meet for National Handloom Days, but in the meanwhile, make nuanced purchases, encourage clusters, and do our very best to keep this flame alive. Thank you so much. And this is Susan, Director for NIFT Bengaluru, signing off Bloom Fest 2021. Thank you so much.